explain how they're reaching their customers, what their business models are, and what their technologies aim to achieve. Victor is with Preveta, and he will take it from here. If you could share your screen, please.
I will. 1 second.
While he's doing that, if everyone at the end of Victor's presentation can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions, and I will moderate the questions from there.
Jim, is the screen on the
that's great.
Screen? Perfect. Okay, let me get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Lee again. I'm the CEO of Preveta. We're an early stage healthcare technology company. Our mission is to transform cancer care through data and analytics. We built a care coordination platform that enables providers to gain additional insights into their patients while they provide additional support for these patients in their cancer treatment journey. And the fundamental, let me see if I can click through, oops. The two fundamental problems that we're aiming to solve at Preveta, it breaks into two sides. The lack of data and lack of access to data and lack of coordinated care. And I'll share a little bit how these two worlds kind of collide. And fundamentally, the problem statement is clinicians still today lack access to critical data at the point of care for them to make decisions. And that stems from the fact that the tools that they have at their disposal, namely EHRs, were mainly built for documenting care for the purposes of billing and for compliance, and not so much to store data in a way that has analytical value. And on the other side, there's so much that patients are overwhelmed with in their care journey, their treatment journey, in terms of all the providers they see, all the things that they need to pay attention to. And so we want to be able to solve that for them to provide that additional support. And so we're going to combine this into one platform to make that happen. So our sort of mission statement here is we empower doctors to provide transformative care by enabling them to collect and leverage data through a revenue positive service. And so the things that we deliver to the system are precision care. So this is care coordination 2.0 for us. We use algorithms to identify the specific ways to provide care for a patient that is unique to their profile, to their disease, what they need at that time. And as such, one of those things are the data gaps that the provider needs to be filled in for them to make that next level of decisions. So we identify those gaps, and then in the process of having that care coordination being delivered, and this is usually a medical assistant or a nurse that's interacting with the patient in a non-face-to-face setting, we're identifying those gaps and we're filling them in through that conversation. And then once we fill that in, we can deliver those data back as a cohesive package in insights, in analytical solutions and visualizations that really help the provider make really quick decisions, the next level of decisions. And on the business side, we know that providers are so overwhelmed that they don't really have the ability to do these next level tasks like better data collection. So what we're trying to do is incentivize the system. So our platform satisfies all the requirements for the provider to get reimbursed for delivering this care coordination. That's usually Medicare honors this, and so do most of the commercial payers. Anywhere from $46 to $600 per patient per month, depending on the amount of time that's spent coordinating care. And then in addition to that, when you fill in these clinical data gaps, you understand more about the disease progression of cancer, and oftentimes the patients qualify for additional treatments that also result in additional revenue for the provider. And then the most important aspect of what we think on the human side is that the patient just gets to experience this greater level of support and empowers them to take charge of their own care. So what does this look like? Just a little bit more in the details of our platform. So our platform mines and analyzes the patient's data and the existing profile and understands who they are, what their needs are, what the data gaps are, and what their disease process is today. And it shapes the algorithms that goes into the sort of conversations that a care coordinator has with the patient over a phone call. So these are unique questions that we pose to the patient through the care coordinators, and oftentimes we're trying to fill in a clinical data gap. In the example of prostate cancer, one of the most important biomarkers is prostate-specific antigen that detects the progression or the growth of the prostate cancer. Oftentimes we see patients that are not compliant with the 6-month interval for getting these diagnostics. So that's one of the things that we identify as something that needs to potentially be filled in. And then the care coordinator understands how to fill that in through our platform. And as that data gets back in, we deliver that complete insight to the provider, and then the provider can see that the cancer has indeed progressed and grown, and they now qualify for an additional treatment that results in either additional revenue or minimally revenue that comes from delivering the care coordination service. So it's actually, our care coordination is actually phase 1 of our go-to-market strategy. Our go-to-market strategy is first start in community practices, moving into the hospital systems, and then later on to providing this data as a service to larger stakeholders like pharma for innovation and insurance companies for population and risk management. The platform, we charge $10 for every patient encounter, and we see the total addressable market in the care coordination space for specialties care is $3 billion. And that's based on an extrapolation of about 600 patient encounters per year per provider. And the way that we're sort of kind of targeting our phase out approach is we are targeting the prostate cancer and other urological cancer space first, and then we're moving on to other cancer arenas, and then moving into the special arena. A little bit about our background. We have sort of a broad background in both the pharma side, the healthcare side, as well as management consulting, and then delivering services both in the commercial sector, also in the government sector, namely intelligence sector. So my background, I started my career at Booz Allen working for NSA to deploy some of the large data platforms for the intelligence community. And then moving on into the commercial sector, where I was also deploying the data warehouse solutions for clients as big as AT&T and Walmart. So amongst the founding team, we have 38 years of clinical experience and 72 years of combined software development experience, and half of that specializing in the sense of data science. And in some ways, our platform is a combination of all those different backgrounds, the clinical program management side of healthcare, as well as the technology and data science side, to combine it all into a platform that ultimately serves the greater good of more data for the system. More about our backgrounds. My background, I've led 2 corporate startups, led organizations, technology organizations as large as 55 million. Our head of product, Stephen, 55 staff, P&Ls of 10 million. Our head of product is also a technologist. He has 15 years of building tech across multiple verticals. And Shirley is our clinical expert, both as a nurse practitioner and clinician, as well as a policy leader that understands sort of the forefront of how to innovate on care coordination and on value-based care. And that's a little bit about us. We want to be able to change the cancer landscape by empowering both the clinicians and patients with the data so that they can make decisions to ultimately save lives. So thank you for your time, and I welcome your questions.
Thanks, Victor. That was a really good presentation. I have a question for you that's a bit of a general question, actually, which is, what are you currently in a fundraising mode? Are you actively looking for certain kinds of customers, and which kind of customers are they? I guess they're 2 different separate questions, but if you can start with that, that would be great while we wait for some Q&A to come through on the platform.
Right, so we're early stage, so we've been bootstrapped since from the inception. So right now we are actively raising our seed round. And in terms of your second question, yes, we are. We've grown to up to 6 customers that are in the community practice setting. That represents about 80 providers. So we've had some really good traction on the market side in that setting, but we do want to talk to hospital systems as well as insurance companies to really expand the impact and expand our patient enrollment.
And specifically, with the insurance companies, how do you typically work with them?
Yeah, so it's a little different model because I think on one hand, on the provider side, we're looking at data that ultimately impacts the decisions on treatment and care. For insurance companies, we look at it from a population management, risk management perspective, where insurance companies are looking for insights that they are able to group populations into different sectors and different risk profiles. And we're looking at and then part of what we want to support is understanding where the riskiest populations are and kind of creating workflows to manage and bring that risk down for to ultimately bring down costs for the providers. So it's having the conversations on how to bucket the different patients and what are the steps to kind of execute on care coordination to ultimately provide them the support so that they're not having sort of unmet needs that ultimately results in more costs down the road.
And what about headbutting against regulatory compliance and other issues, HIPAA or I don't know, another regulatory barrier that might exist that we don't know about?
Sure, yeah. So on the HIPAA data privacy side, everything that we store is HIPAA compliant. We have HIPAA regulations that, for instance, data encryption at rest, data encryptions in transit. So all those things and sort of the policy mechanisms like password policies and operational policies of how we kind of conduct our business. So that on that end, sort of addressing that. From a privacy perspective, when we're looking into the phase 3 approach of data monetization, you've got to be very mindful of de-identifying the patient data. So there are multiple paths there where in terms of there's the most conservative path is it's a 2-step way to de-identify patients. So that you can never crosswalk the data back to the patient itself. But if we're looking at aggregation of data in terms of trends, populations, that gets into even more de-identified because then we're kind of rolling things up and we're just really understanding insights. For instance, one of the things in the pharma sector is understanding the social determinants for why patients fall off treatments, or the actual in practice of the treatment. What are the patients experiencing? What side effects? What are the leading causes for patients not tolerating certain medications? Those are things that are insights that we have in a more sort of colloquial understanding. Clinicians do, but they don't really have it from a pure statistical perspective.
Right, and I guess a somewhat related question. Is there an avenue for different kinds of clinicians outside of cancer? Or do you see other areas in which you can branch into? For example, we're in a crisis with a virus at the moment, and there are clinicians that require other areas of care. Is there some other application for this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll kind of answer it in twofold. We do want to start in the cancer space because that's there's a personal mission behind it. But our platform allows for correlating cancer for multiple disease states that are outside cancer. So anything that is more chronic disease related, where data is one of the forefront, kind of objectives for advancing that particular treatment, understanding better insights, that's all compatible in our platform. So, and that's part of our roadmap is we want to target, sort of oncologists, and then we're moving into other specialties, that's not necessarily cancer related. And
any in particular? I mean, orthopedics, anything?
Yeah, it's more like internal medicine, sort of what's going on in the body that's more data driven, things that have progressive kind of natures to, the intersection of data driven care and the disease that, that it informs. So orthopedics, there are companies out there that kind of specialize in how to, help patients with after treatment care, right, after surgery. And they do a great job there. It's not really kind of being in our wheelhouse because it's really a very acute state, and we're looking at more of a chronic kind of state of management.
Right. And how's COVID impacting your current activities and your long-term strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because we're in this model of providing non-face-to-face care and enabling that to happen, it actually is a very helpful tool for our providers, our existing customers, and our potential customers. So, I was just kind of talking to Ann right before this call that this week we signed on 2 additional customers, word of mouth based on referrals from our other existing customers, because everybody's trying to understand how to fill in the gaps, the provider gaps of revenue and patient engagement, because the volume for clinic visits have gone dramatically down because of the social distancing rules. And telehealth is an option, it's a virtual conference between a provider and the patient, but
Yes.
not all patients are able to do that or want to do that. And the idea of still providing a level of support, especially today, is very much real, right? In between visits. So we see that as something that we really feel passionate about, because some of the more at-risk patients are the ones that we do need to be calling on a more frequent basis, and providers know that. And because it's reimbursed, we find the system finds value in providing that proactive care.
Great. We probably have time for one more question. Anyone can use the Q&A box down at the bottom instead of the chat box, please, to ask their questions. Any more questions, please? Otherwise, we'll move on to Fernando. But I do want to get at least one more question in. No, no more? I think we answered every question, Victor.
Okay, good.
All right, well, thank you very, very much. If you could unshare your screen, please.
Yep.
And then we'll call Fernando up. And